were talking about the diode, and we said that the diodes can be modeled as in the forward mode and in the reverse bias mode. Okay, so we said that in the forward mode diode هتكون on. Okay, so this is a plus minus V, and the current always flows in the direction of the arrow of the diode. And in the forward mode, it is on. And if it is on, it acts really as a short circuit. Okay, and we said that the voltage of the diode is equal to 0. And when we solve, so basically, how are we going to handle the diode inside the circuit? We set, if we assume that it is on, we set V equals 0, and we need to check that I is positive. يعني أنا لما بحط الدايود بقلب circuit, I'm going to set if I assume that it is on. يعني أنا عندي two states, right? I will have two states, the forward state or the reverse bias state, where the diode in the reverse bias mode, where the diode is in the off state. And in this scenario, the diode, the voltage بدلهم هن ذاتهم ال V وال I direction, but the way we are going to model it is we are going to model it here as an open circuit. يعني حيكون عندي الدايود حتكون open circuit. So the current that is flowing in the diode is 0. So if we want to test if it is in the reverse bias mode, we are going to set I to 0, and we need to check if the voltage across the diode is negative. What does this mean? طب يعني أنا لما في عندي resistor بقلب الcircuit, if I have a resistor R in the circuit, typically what do I apply? So let's go back, recall إنه نحن لما كان عندنا resistor, إذا عندي voltage و resistor R, okay, let us say plus or minus 3, and this is 1 kilo ohm. How did we solve this? We would say, we would apply KCL, right? We would say minus 3 plus 1000 times I is equal to 0. So we find the I of the resistor. So I is equal to what? 3 over 1000. This is known, right? So for a resistor, I apply Ohm's law. So, and for a resistor, if I look at its characteristics of the Ohm's law, I have V equal IR. And if this is the current I and this is VR, how does the curve look here? What is the relation between V and I?
V equal Ri, so it's a straight line passing through the origin.
So it's a straight line passing through the origin. And what is the slope here? مين الواي axis عندي هون؟ الI. صح? So the I is the y axis. So what is the I in terms of V? V على R, يعني قد slope هون؟
1 over R.
1 over R. Okay, so in Ohm's law, we know how to solve in a circuit, and we know how to draw the characteristics of the resistor لأنه عنده one operating mode, صح؟ طيب بالنسبة للدايود إذا بدي أجي أرسم ال characteristics of the diode. So for the diode, if I want to draw I versus V, okay, so this is the V and this is the current معلي عم نرسمها small كنا للدايود. How does it work if we look back here? إذا كان مثل ما حكينا عليها positive voltage والcurrent is flowing from positive to negative، يعني هيك لنرجع نرسم الcircuit يعني كان قبل بس عملنا single pages. اوكي إذا بنرجع نرسم السيركت اللي مرقنا فيه بالريزستور حيكون عندي الدايود هون صح وعندي الريزستور. If the voltage at the anode is positive, this is going to cause the current flow to be similar to the direction of the current of the diode. And the diode will be what in this scenario? On. Okay, so إذا الدايود عليها positive voltage, صح? The current will be what? Positive, and we don't know exactly how much. But if the diode has a negative voltage across it, يعني جاي على الأنود, what is the direction of the current flow we expected last time? من البوزيتيف للنيجاتيف, صح? Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Okay. So in this scenario لما يكون الدايود عليها negative voltage يعني جاية على الأنود اللي لها حتكون cut off وحتكون open circuit, وشو حيكون الكرنت؟
Zero.
So فإذا أنا if the voltage across the diode is negative, هلا بناخذ example بنعرف أكثر ليش ال V is negative. The current is zero لما ال V is negative. وإذا I have a certain current, هلا نحن حنرسمها, هي هيدي ال ideal. I is positive and the current is going to be what? And the voltage it is going to be a short circuit. هلا نشوف أكثر بالexample إنه لما تكون on حيكون في عندي current I, okay, and I am going to model it as a short circuit. Okay, so characteristics are still weird for us. Let us take an example and see how we solve in the context of a diode. كيف بعمل لها solution. هلا let me ask you this question. If I want to solve and I don't know really what region of operation the diode is in, what do I do? شو بعمل؟ شو الأوبشنز اللي عندي هن؟ شو في عندي
Either
option?
on or off.
Either on or off. بعرف how I replace the diode with what circuit element, يعني هيدا linear circuit element. بصير عم غيرها بشيء ملموس.
Open circuit و close
Short circuit, صح?
Short. Yes.
So so I have two options. I assume it is on and I replace it by a short circuit. I set V equals 0. I solve for my circuit and then check if I is positive. إذا طلعت I positive, my assumption is correct. وإلا بدي أجي أقول طيب it is off. Let me set it as an open circuit, solve for the KVL or KCL, and check if V is negative. If V is negative, one of the two assumptions has to work. Okay, so فإذا the process to deal with the diode in a circuit is by making an assumption. Okay, so number one, we make an assumption. Okay, replace, if the assumption is on, replace the diode, right, by a short, يعني V equal to 0, then solve and check if I is negative. If the assumption holds, خلاص we exit. Okay, if the assumption holds, then it is good. Else, we set it assume off. Okay, and what do we replace it? Replace by open circuit. من يوم رايحة نستعمل OC as open circuit. Okay, and meaning I is equal to 0, and solve and check for what? If V is negative. هلا نحن sometimes we can guess أي assumption نبلش فيه. مثل ما we saw in this example إنه أنا already I know that if this is going to allow things to flow, then they should flow from positive to negative, and the current flow will be in the direction of the arrow, so I should assume it on. Okay, so we can help ourselves by guessing, okay, from the beginning instead of trying the two options. So let us take a simple example. where they tell us that we have a 10-volt supply, okay, and this 10-volt is connected to a resistor which is 1K, and then connected to a diode, okay, and basically what we mean by 10-volt here, meaning I have a positive terminal here and the negative terminal here, right? So this is minus plus 10 volt. طيب أول شيء we do, the first thing that we do is we set the diode characteristics. يعني هي positive terminal of the diode, this is the negative terminal, and this is the direction of I of the diode. ما بنغيرها. Okay, so now what should we assume this diode, in what region do I assume this diode is operating?
The on region.
The on. كيف direction, for those who did not guess, of the current flow? It's going to go from the positive to the negative, right? So the direction, the expected direction of the current flow is from the positive to negative, okay? And therefore, it matches the I diode, okay? So we will start with the assumption it matches I diode. So we will start with the assumption that the diode is on, okay? Perfect. So assume that the diode is on now. So we will start, assume on. How do we draw now my circuit? How does the new circuit look like? I will have the resistor. I will have the diode replaced by a short circuit. يعني هيدي الدايود بيجي بعمل لها replacing هيدا ال V وال I لها بshort circuit, and then I will have my supply which is plus minus 10 volts. Okay, and so great. بخلي الدايركشن للدايود current كيف؟ I. And this is V of the diode, which is 0, right? So we know that V is 0. We want to check for what? بما أنه قلنا on إنه I is positive. How do we solve for this circuit? كيف بنحلها؟ شو بنعمل؟
KCL.
KCL.
Or KVL, right? Sorry أنا أنت بالأول غلط. So إذا عملنا كيرشوف voltage loop شو بتقلي ال KVL؟
قلنا انه I equal V over R.
اوكي بس اذا بدي الحق انا الاي اللي قاطعه نزول بدي اقول minus 10 فولت انا كرمال more complex circuit صح؟ plus VR is equal to 0 صح؟ so minus 10 volts but VR is equal to what؟ I diode صح؟ الاي diode قاطعه فيه بنفس الدايركشن تاعون الكرنت تاعونه صح؟ I diode times R equals 0. So what is I equal to?
10 over 1000.
10 over 1000. Is this a positive quantity?
Yes.
Yes, so my diode, so this is correct, okay, and my diode is on. Okay, so my assumption here is correct because my diode I is positive and the diode is on. Okay, حدا عنده سؤال؟
Doctor, I have a question. Don't we just know إذا الدايود بيكون on ولا off depending on the direction تبعه? Direction when it is drawn يعني.
هون it is simple because we have a constant voltage and a resistor, right? So we can guess. Typically, if we start to have more complex circuits, again, it is very good for us to know إنه لو كانت الدايود مش موجودة قبل ما نحل حتى إذا شلتها غطيتها وحطيت short circuit, how do I expect the current to flow? يعني مثلا حأعطيك simple example على السكند page، معلش حأعملها شوي more complex ونرجع نمرق بالsimple example تاعون الأوف ومنفرجي إنه if my assumption is wrong how it works. So let me assume that I have a voltage here which is a plus 10, صح? And then I have a branch here with a diode which is minus 5, and then another branch here with a diode which is, let us say, and I'm making this up now, this is plus 11. Okay, which diode do you expect will be on?
I expect the one at the -5 direction to be on.
Okay, and this is because we expect the current to flow from the positive to the negative, right? So we expect we can have this current, but this one, it will oppose it, right? لأنه عندها الفولتج from this side جاي من اثنين two sides أوطى من هيدا، صح؟ So it cannot create a current. يعني صحيح sometimes the values of the resistors are 1, or 2, or 3, they may affect the voltage division على intermediate node وقديش عندي أنا يعني قديش إذا أنا الكرنت حيطلع من anode للكاثود أو vice versa. But sometimes the numbers will prove themselves irrespective of the circuit elements. So sometimes we will need to solve for whatever our intuition tells us, and let us go by our first intuition. And sometimes it is clear, but we still need to verify it. Okay? Is this clear?
Okay, thank you.
سؤال? Okay, you are welcome. So أنا حشيل هيدا الexample لأنه it's out of sequence. And let us start by drawing the example that is the opposite side. So now we will have another example 2. Okay, and for example 2, now we will have the 10 volts here, and we will have a resistor of 1K, but the diode will be opposing the current. So if we want to draw plus or minus V for the diode, this is plus or minus V, and the I for the diode is the current that is going up. Okay? So the question is, what is the region of operation of this diode? What do I expect this diode to be operating on or off?
It will be off.
It will be off. ليش؟ لأنه الكرنت flows from high voltage to low voltage, right? From positive to negative, right? So really, if there were any current to flow, it would have flown in this direction. يعني الdiode is opposing it. So the effective circuit, we are going to assume that it is off. Okay, and the effective circuit that we are going to draw is an open circuit, and this node is 10 volt. يعني كأنه أنا عندي هون plus or minus 10 volts. Okay, so بعده current of the diode is going up, but now I is really equal to 0. And where is the voltage across the diode? مثل ما كان مرسوم بالأول، ما بنغيره. Okay, so this is very important when you verify that we keep the same voltage direction for the diode. And now if I want to apply KVL, what will I say? هيدي موصولة هون صح؟ If I apply KVL, what do I say? So according to KVL, لهيك مهم نحلها KVL, minus 10 volts plus 0 times R، لأن الكرنت اللي قاطع إذا اعتبرنا هيدا VR صح؟ minus V is equal to what? 0. Is this clear? Okay. So if we solve now, V will be equal to minus 10 volts, so it is negative. Therefore, when we solved, we set I equal to 0, عملنا الدايود open circuit, and we checked if V is negative. Okay, and this is correct, and therefore my assumption is correct. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Next time I will repeat this example, and we will see what happens if we assume that we take the wrong region. Okay, so next time I will answer your questions on this problem. Okay, طيب هلا I'm going to drop the sharing. And what I want you all to go to Moodle page, and I'm going to also